Let's call the meeting to order. Let's all stand for a flag salute. Councilmember Hunter Larkin, lead us in the pledge and the prayer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for peace and prosperity for the city that we love. We hope that you give the city staff and governing body the wise decision-making skills to do what's best for the city of Goddard. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Is there any changes to the agenda that anyone's aware of?
Yes, we've added, and it's updated online, we added item G2, which is the North Main Street Land Purchase Agreement Amendment, and there's no executive session.
All right, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion?
Motion, is there a second?
A second.
Discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, we'll have citizens' comments. Anybody would like to address the council, please come forward, state your name, your address, and your concern, and we're more than happy to give you 3 minutes. If there are no citizens' comments, we'll close the citizen comment section. All right, we don't have any appointments or proclamations, do we?
Nope.
We'll move on to the consent agenda. Has everyone had an opportunity to look over the minutes and the payables? If so, I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion?
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Move on to G, unfinished business.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, this is item G1. This is the follow-up to the dispute of a code violation for 411 North Craig Street. So on March 15, 2022, City Code Enforcement Officer documented a violation of the City of Goddard Code, Section 8-308, upon the premises located at 411 North Craig Street. Certified letter was sent allowing 15 days for the property owner to remediate the issue. Property owners are Scott and Tiffany Woodjur, who live in Colwich, Kansas. Tenant is Larry Veltman, who is disputing the code violation. Mr. Veltman was informed of his right to legal counsel if he desired it, and he provided notice within a 15-day time frame allowed to be considered before the governing body per City of Goddard Code 8-312. On May 16, 2022, Mr. Veltman came before the governing body to present his case and stated he was in the process of cleaning up the property and just needed some additional time. Governing body granted Mr. Veltman 30 days to remediate the property. A follow-up meeting on June 20th to review the progress. The code enforcement officer followed up. Mr. Veltman inspected the property on Friday the 17th. City of Goddard Code found the following non-compliance. City of Goddard Code, Chapter 8, Article 3, Environmental Code. And so these were the issues that came up the first time around. This is March 15th. This is June 20th. So as you can see, he did some significant remediation. He just hasn't brought it up to complete compliance. Mr. Veltman was informed that he probably should be here present. I don't know if he's...
I can't hear a word he's saying really, but I'll respond.
Yeah. So this is kind of what we have here, and Mr. Veltman will present his case further. Review of the property has found the property improved but not fully remediated. A resolution has been drafted per City Code 8-312 for consideration before the governing body. The resolution would consider the matter unresolved and dictate that Mr. Veltman finish remediation within 30 days of publication in the city newspaper, with the city remediating the property if he fails to do so. Small cost for publication, legally approved as the form. It is recommended City Council approve the resolution considering the property in violation of Goddard Code 8-308. But Mr. Veltman at this point will be able to plead his case. So, Mr. Veltman, if you would, come on up.
So I spoke with Micah here on Wednesday, and he called and asked about the progress. We were not done. Part of it was due to the weather. That area floods and the field beside us floods. I couldn't get a trailer in there for the better part of 2 weeks because of the ground being wet. On Wednesday, I told Micah that I had a load that I was taking. I was taking another load. That Friday, I would be 95% done. He asked about coming by about 1 o'clock to take a look at it. I said, sure, you'll see. A couple of those pictures he took don't have anything to do with the back of that fence line. I have, the issue was the fence line in the back. When he came, I had just left with a trailer load when he came. I have pictures right now of the backyard right now that are completely, that pile by the mower is gone. The stuff right there on the second picture below it's gone. The picture on the third to the left of them is gone. The picture in the top left-hand corner didn't relate to what the violations were. Those units all run. They're behind a 6-foot privacy fence that nobody can see unless you go in the backyard. I'm not saying I'm completely done, but if you would like to look at the pictures of what's left, barring the upper left-hand corner picture, it's much different than what you see there. As far as, Micah made the comment that there's a lot left to be done. Three of the 4 of those pictures are gone, and that was they were gone on Friday. The picture in the upper left-hand corner, again, it's behind a 6-foot privacy fence, can be seen by nobody. All those units run. I do heating and air. Tenant or landlords often call me for used units. Those units all run. They're not scrapped out. They're not anything. If I put them behind a tarp, you wouldn't even know what they were.
Can I say your phone, sir?
Yes. So there's a couple here. Let me.
How long is it going to take you to clean the rest of the stuff up?
Well, truthfully, maybe, there really isn't anything left. You'll see there's 2 pictures. So there's that one. This is what's left. The motorcycles, which aren't part of the scrap, and the mower, and it's not part of the scrap. The rest of the yard back there is pretty much cleaned up. You can show that, if you want to show that.
So what are we requiring, Micah? For him to get rid of the motorcycles? Or
No, motorcycles are fine. Technically, these commercial parts need to be either enclosed, out of sight, or they need to be in the garage, or they need to be in a shed. You can't have commercial accessory pieces in the yard.
It's not. It's behind a 6-foot privacy fence that nobody can get to. The gate is locked on all sides. Nobody can get in
Where
there.
did these complaints come from?
It doesn't
I don't
really
have.
matter if
I have a. I
Doesn't
have a
really
vehicle
matter
in
if it's
there.
not abiding by code. That's what the code is for, is to try to,
I'm sorry.
that code is just to define what's acceptable and what's not acceptable.
Right.
And so that's where Micah's coming in, is this is a violation of code.
Okay. What I'm saying is I've cleaned up 99% of what Micah was talking about originally.
But Micah's still saying that according to code, those air conditioners have to be.
That's not
in storage.
commercial. It's not commercial business.
But it's still against the code having that there.
I could drive. I feel like I have a bullseye on my back right here, right now, that he is nitpicking everything he can. That's not any different than storing tires or whatever else in my backyard. I can't choose what I keep in my backyard behind a 6-foot gated fence that's locked.
That's what we got code for in the city.
I understand that, but I could drive around. I drove past 3 yards that Micah drives past, I'm sure, every day, that are just as bad or worse than that on my way here. Michael looked over, when this began, I agreed with you guys. I said that I'd gotten behind on it, that it happened over the winter, and I was working to clean it up. But right now, I feel like now we're just trying to find more and more and more to keep me in front of this. And, you know, I am trying to take care of it.
Are you renting the place?
Um,
Are you renting?
Yeah.
Okay.
My landlord, I'm a heating and air technician. My landlord knows what I do. And granted, it wasn't supposed to get this bad, but that happened over the winter. It's all gone. But as far as the used units, I've worked for several landlords and property managers. Those, I can sell those and make extra money. I mean, it's not any different than being on Amazon and selling my shoes after I've worn them for 10 days. You know, I hate to say that. I mean, you can say that's not.
Think of it as though they have storage units in town for rent, that you could rent and store these things in a storage unit somewhere.
That defeats the purpose of it. I don't make thousands of dollars on them. I make a few hundred. I mean, I understand what you're saying. If I had 40 of them, I agree 100%. I've got about 6. You know, I'm not stockpiling them back there. And actually, 2 of them went away this weekend, so there's not even 6 back there now. You know, I'm not stockpiling these on the idea that I want to have 50 on hand all the time. But as I get them, I do keep them and then I get rid of them. But a storage shed for 4 or 5 units doesn't make, if I'm paying $150 a month for that, what's the point?
Well, I mean,
I have a backyard that's got a 6-foot privacy fence that nobody can see back there. I don't understand the issue here. It's not dangerous to anybody else. It's not kids running around. They're not torn to pieces. You know,
Micah, are they visible from?
I'm sorry.
Micah, are they visible from outside the fence?
You'd have to walk up to the fence to see them. The fence has slats in it, so you can look right through it and see them, or you can look over the fence. It just depends on different factors, but you can't see it from the street, and you probably can't see it from the neighbor's yards. You'd have to be next to the fence to see it.
So even for all those apartments nearby, they can
Those
see.
apartments are elevated, so there's a second story. If they had a window,
They can't see them where those are sitting.
I mean, go back to the old picture. I mean, look at that. He's done
Quite a bit of work.
quite a bit of work.
Yeah, he's done a long.
He's went a long ways.
My opinion, Micah, is, you know,
It's
my dad did the same stuff, you know, sold extra AC units and different things. It's a way to make a living, okay? And I don't have a problem with it if it doesn't get back to what it was in the previous.
And I agree. I won't let that happen again. That's all cleaned up. Believe me, I'm happy to have it cleaned up, and truthfully, I appreciate Micah lighting a fire in my butt. But to continue on, I feel like, yeah.
you know, the only problem that it happens is that we grant you an exception, and the next thing you know, we've got 5 other people wanting that same exception in town. So where does our code end up? Our code ends up being null and void.
Well, I
because we're
would
allowing all
feel
the
you're right
exceptions.
if it was being enforced fairly all through the city, but I can drive to 5 different places where it's been just as bad or worse than that for a long time.
Well,
we're not- I mean,
we're
we're not-
supposed to be enforcing it all.
Well, I'm not arguing with you. I'm just telling you that this is behind a 6-foot. This isn't out for public to see. It's behind a 6-foot privacy fence with no access. All the gates are locked. Micah even said you have to look over the fence to see into the backyard. The apartments beside us cannot see. They could have seen what was strung out in the previous pictures. They can't see any of that or beyond the pool because of the angles of the windows. My next door neighbors, number one, they can't see either unless they look over the fence, but we've lived next to them for 15 years. They've never said a word. They don't mind, you know. I guess, you know, my main thing was that it's cleaned up for all intents and purposes, and I feel like he's just pushing harder. And like I say, that don't know, I guess I'm gonna keep repeating myself, so I'm gonna stop. I've said what I have to say, I guess.
I guess it comes down to the council making a decision on whether they want to enforce the code to its entirety or whether they want to allow an exception. And the caution about allowing an exception is that you can allow one, you're going to allow more than one in the next 6 months. But it's up to you.
I think I've already said my piece.
Michael, what do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, you can't put them in your garage?
There's a vehicle in the garage.
Can you figure
I
out
mean,
a way to stack them up in the garage?
It's a 73 Chevelle. I don't really want it sitting, it's been redone. I don't really want it sitting outside, so it stays in the garage.
There's just one car. It's a one-car garage.
Yes, it's a one-car garage.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad to see all the progress you've made.
Pardon me, would it be possible for you to get a storage, would it be possible for a storage shed? And you could then store those within that garden shed? Like, where you can open a door wide enough for a ride-in tractor to go in and out of, so that in theory would be wide enough for those units to be placed. And it would also get them out of the elements, which I know they're out in most of the time.
Their air
anyway.
conditioners, it doesn't matter. I understand what you're saying, but again, that's cost for something that is really just extra money to me. I'm happy I'd cover them with a tarp. I'll move them up against the back of the house where nobody can see them, period, if he doesn't like them on the fence. I'm not asking to keep 30, there's 4 or 5 of them back there. And like I say, they rotate out. It's not the same 4 or 5 every month even.
If they're covered with a tarp, does that meet code or doesn't it?
I'm sorry.
Not necessarily. Technically, all commercial businesses need to be enclosed within the house. Anything that's protruding into the yard is considered a violation. I mean, there's multiple code violations just off this one here about commercial businesses, and when I mean by a commercial business, I'm not saying that these are used for a commercial business. This is acting as a business for Mr. Veltman, so this is an extension. He's basically using his backyard as storage for his business. That's a code violation there. And the fact that just because they're intact doesn't mean that these are considered anything less than metal pieces or accessories or anything else of that nature. And I want to dispute the fact that this is not necessarily us just nitpicking. This is simply a matter of enforcing code, yes or no. The city has no personal objection one way or another. It's simply a matter of interpreting code. And if council feels that this is the fair interpretation of that code and the enforcement of that code, and that's kind of direction the city staff will take. Leniency is completely up to the council.
I feel, in my opinion, that times are tough right now. I think people are trying to make a little extra money here and there, and it doesn't bother me that this gentleman's wanting to try to sell some AC units, just as long as it doesn't go back to what it was before. That's what the real problem is, in my opinion. I can't say what the rest of the council wants, but as far as the photos he's shown on his phone, it does look like a normal backyard now. I mean, I can get the lawnmower, that doesn't really bother me, or the motorcycles, that doesn't bother me.
Motorcycles, lawnmowers, those aren't code
So,
violations.
I think times are tough, and it doesn't bother me. And I do understand Larry's point about letting one thing slide and it going downhill, but we got to make sure it doesn't go downhill to the point to where it was previously. So we have to show a little grace.
Correct?
I'm fine with the way it is now, but we're gonna check sometime next year, just a random check to see where you're at. We'll do a random check next year to see where you're at, see if you're not back to the first one,
It won't
the
be.
first pictures,
It won't be.
and there won't be any lenient then. You know what I'm saying? By we do a random check next year.
Mhm. Well,
You're
I
gonna be right
guarantee
here
you,
again,
it won't
so.
be even close. It'll never be close to that again. I mean, I'm truthfully happy to have it cleaned up, but I did appreciate getting the fire lit under my butt, but I think I've said what I said.
That's where I'm at.
What do you think, Michael?
Looks like we got a hung jury if I. So, yeah, I mean, I get that there's limited storage, but we gotta figure out. I mean, I don't know. It's a tough one. Cause like, I mean, you know my grandpa.
Yeah.
So, I guess in family tradition, I'll show a little leniency.
Your grandpa got some stuff.
No, it's just whispers.
So what are your thoughts, Nate? If you just move those units close together?
Yeah,
time-
I would
time
appreciate
delivery
if you
on
could
the
get
site?
them as best you can out of your site, and then I'll side with them. If you-
I'm sorry, guys.
If you can get them as best out of sight as you can and cover them up
I'll
somehow,
put tarps in and put them against the back of the house. If that, I
yeah.
mean, that'll take them out of yard view, I guess.
All right.
I mean, I'm okay with that.
sure.
Not like I said, I appreciate that.
You know, all you gotta do is put some flower pots on top of them, you're good to go.
Hey, don't forget your phone right there.
Yeah.
Oh, is that? No, that's
There you go. Yeah, making a.
I guess the council
Warranted.
decided to make an exception and allow them to have those units.
Motion would be to consider the property abated and maybe a future review, I suppose, of that property around that motion.
Yeah.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, motion a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, we're gonna move on.
Honorable Mayor and Council, this is the addition to the agenda. It was brought to our attention that for the development process for the sale of the ground, that the purchaser's development team would need some additional time to finalize their due diligence process. The city received the ground on December 21st, 2020, and agreed to proceed with the selling of the property. On April 1st, we extended the due diligence to April 4th, and then on April 4th, the council unanimously approved the extension to July 1st, 2022. And again, the purchaser's development team is requesting a 90-day extension. This is the parcel in question. It's approximately 4 acres immediately behind the Orschelns. The Third Amendment merely extends the due diligence period to 5 p.m. on October 1st, 2022.
Do they know what they're doing with the ground yet?
Well, and the next item will be for the rezoning, which will be item H2 on our agenda this evening. So once that's completed, then I believe at that time they'll begin to move forward with some sort of higher density housing there. And the purchase price, in accordance with our financial policy, would go into the capital improvement fund, so we're not utilizing a one-time revenue for operational costs that would then create a restriction or pickle down the road. And the agreement was authored by the city attorney and scrivener. Are there any questions? I mean, it's, as you see, it's one page, it's pretty to the point, extends the due diligence period.
Due diligence period you would need to extend it to,
90 days, so it'd go from July 1st to October 1st. And we expect that they would probably have that under contract and sold within the next 60 days. So we expect, we don't think it'll take 90 days, but
So we need to make a motion to extend the GT recommendation for 90 days.
yes, sir.
I make a motion.
Second.
motion a second, any other discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to new business.
This is item H.1, So this is a public meeting for dispute of code violation 520 North Goddard Road. Mr. Mayor, at this point, you can open up the public meeting. This will be a public hearing. It's quasi-judicial, but doesn't have to follow any of the traditional rules of court or anything of that nature. This is just in per the code of the city of Goddard. So at this point, Mr. Mayor, if you want to open up the public hearing at this time,
Do
you
we
can do
need
so.
to explain what that code is all about?
Yes, we'll jump into it. This is just opening the hearing because it'll be an informal conversation with property owners just like you have in this development, so similar to that.
All right, we'll open up the code hearing for 520 North Goddard Road.
Very good. Quick background. On May 13th, 2022, the City Code Enforcement Officer documented violation of City of Goddard Code, Section 8-502 and 8-201 upon the premises located at 520 North Goddard Road. Certified letter was sent allowing a maximum of 15 days elapsed to remediate the issue. The items identified are grass and or weeds exceeding 8 inches and piles of brush and limbs of cinder blocks and concrete debris, metal pieces in a disorderly pile upon the lot. Property owners are Smith, Matthew Everett, and Jessica Ann Chapman. They are disputing the code violation. Property owners mowed the property but have yet to remove the accumulation of brush and limb piles, metal parts, cinder blocks off the property. City of Goddard Code Officer, me and myself, found the following non-compliant City of Goddard Code, Chapter 8, Article 5, Weeds, and Chapter 8, Article 2, Health and Nuisance. Goddard City Code 8-502, all properties shall have grass and weeds no higher than 8 inches. And this is what we use universally across the City of Goddard. And this is residential or commercial properties. There's no distinction. Goddard City Code 8-201, it shall be unlawful for any person to maintain or cause or permit any nuisance within the city limits of the City of Goddard. Kansas purpose of this ordinance nuisance means in the following: solid material, industrial material, or commercial material located upon premises located within any area zone for residential purposes, that building materials are to be used within 90 days. So basically anything that's being built in the moment. Piles or otherwise disorderly accumulation of wood located upon any residential or commercial properties or vacant lands in residential or commercial areas, except wood that is for use of the premise upon which it's located, which is stored in orderly fashion at least 6 inches above the ground and completely on concrete. So these are the code violations that were described and documented. These were the code violations in question. We have grass over here and grass over here, and this is the accumulation of brush pile. Cinder blocks are off to the left, pieces of metal. Property owners did abate the grass. This accumulation, as far as I know, is still there. Checked last Friday. Small publication cost for a resolution approved as the form. It is recommended that City Council approve a resolution determining the property located at 520 North Goddard Road is in violation of City of Goddard Code 8-201. We're only going with 8-201 and not the grass, which is 8-5, because the grass has been abated. So at this point, property owners, I believe, are here. You want to come on up? Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Jessica Chapman. This is Matthew Smith. We are the property owners there. We purchased the property in 2020. And what you see on these pictures is the limbs were present. I think before we bought it, there were trailers there. So there's cement blocks left from that trailer removal. They removed the trailers before we bought the property. They left some of the ties still on the ground. There's a brick building, and that brick wall that he mentioned, the brick cinder blocks you see in the back, basically are the back wall of the property. I'm guessing so that the property owner previously knew where the line marked was, essentially. I'm not here to argue today about violation of the code. I'm here to argue the point that the code is a bit arbitrary. So I'll just start from the top. We're not going to deal with, like I said, 8-502. We've mowed the grass. That's been taken care of. But we're talking about 8-201 with few accumulation of woods and debris upon the property. My letter specifically detailed that the part they were talking about was few accumulation of wood and debris. So if you go back to that screen that you had marked for the different violations, if you don't mind. Yes, you have marked JK. We don't have JK on ours. In fact, it is, in fact, listed 8-201, and it gives me the entire code. So it's hard to disseminate what exactly he was talking about. We assumed it was the brush pile as there was a picture to accompany the letter. All right. Number one, obtainment of a hearing. I had to go and search this out. Luckily, I understand how to read code, know how to go back and look that up. So I figured out how to get a hearing because the letter did not tell me how to obtain a hearing for this. Does anyone find that problematic? Gentlemen.
Well, I mean, if he sent you a letter stating that you're in violation, well, then you contact him and then he can arrange for the hearing if you want to hear him.
It didn't tell me to contact him. It did have his signed stamped signature, so to speak, but it didn't say how to handle this, what to do. And as far as I understand it, based on the online ordinances, this code hasn't been updated in 21 years. Additionally, we found that specific date for compliance. In our letter, we had 7 days, 15 days, and for the rest of the year. I go back and I read the code, specifically, make sure I get it right. Yeah, I know what I want. The nuisance code, make sure I get this right. Yes. The City Code of Health and Welfare, which is Chapter 8, Article 2. It has 10 days delineated. So even the letter is not compliant with the code. It doesn't make sense. So, and then additional actions that might be taken for said infraction. Comply by removal or abatement. To request a hearing within 10 days. Have the city remove it and abate at citizens' expense. And or be prosecuted that detailed up to 30 days in jail and a $100 fine per offense per day.
Or both.
Or both. I find that a bit excessive for tree removal. And then when I ask you what the meaning of abatement is, do you all know that?
Well, that just means that if you don't remove it, the city will remove it for you and then charge you for going to put it on your tax roll.
Right. Well, abatement by definition is lessening. If I were to remove one stick from that pile, I would be abating.
But you haven't abated the whole pile.
If I told you that I moved a limb, then that's abatement. Who's this? There's subjective points of view here, which makes it arbitrary, which makes it capricious, which brings me to my second point, the fees. You'll be billed for that service with a $250 fine, plus an hourly mowing cost each time you mow the property. Billed for that service. Is that service of someone contacting city staff to mow? Is that a general warning that there will be a charge? Honestly, it was interpretive. Well, if you continue reading with a $250 administrative fee, one may say you'll be charged for something, and with that something there will be an admin fee too. It's not clear. A citizen of Goddard should not be in the business of interpreting code and interpreting communications for the city with such a high penalty as imprisonment. We could go more explain. There's no explanation for why there's a $250 charge. I mean, presumably there's someone who has to mail the letter, write the letter, send the letter, get the stamp, get the envelope, so forth and so on. I'm not sure that accumulates to $250. But let's just go with that, that it might be that much. Furthermore, when we submitted our request for a hearing, once we figured out how to do it, we came to Micah, and he was very lovely. Thank you for assisting us. He offered us more time. The code does not offer you more time. There's no indication. Now that's just the indication that the city's willing to work with you, which we appreciate, but that essentially leaves Micah with the ability of, Lord and Master of the, whether you can or cannot have more time in this situation. That's a problem. There's no way to account for that. There's no way to judge that. Is he giving just us more time? Anyone more time? How many people has he given more time to or not given more time to? Leaves a lot to interpretation again. Moreover, there are other issues. I don't want to suck up everybody's time. Again, time is an issue. 7 days, 10 days, 15 days. Excuse me, my mouth is dry. We were already looking for someone to mow the lawn. I mean, that had just rained, and May 15th, you go back and look at that, that's when that heavy rain had just come down. Grass shoots up, everybody knows that. We knew that it needed to be mowed. Our mower went out, as did the tire on it. In this economy, we couldn't find someone to do it. The service industry is hit hard. The code doesn't allow for exceptions to that. So again, I'm not arguing that we didn't violate the code. I'm arguing that the code is out of date and should be updated. I'm arguing that if I move one limb, I comply with your request, which is probably not your intent. Remedy request. So I came to you with a problem. What am I asking for? We're asking for clarification on abatement, which means lessening or reduction of something. Is that stick per day for 7 days, 10 days, 15 days? Is that a wheelbarrow full of limbs? Who's the measure and who's measuring what and by what standard? We're asking that in letters that go out to potential ordinance violators, a description of more time be included in the letter, as well as the means and time frame to request a hearing, so that you don't have to go search it out. We're asking for a more detailed form from the city describing the cost of removing the limbs or mowing the grass, as in this economy, the city may be a viable candidate for a cost-effective remedy when you can't find someone or people are unable to do it. We're asking the city to plan a remedy for those who are disabled, infirmed, incapacitated, impoverished, or in some uncontrolled manner unable to comply with these codes through no fault of their own. We are asking city officials to locate and post a notice of organizations that will help remedy ordinance violations for those who are not aware or do not have the means to find such organizations. We're asking for clarity in the code language, for example, blighting, which by definition means severe detrimental effect. I don't know how the limb pile that was there when we previously bought the property and has been there for some time with the previous owners is a detriment, but perhaps it might have a severe effect on the aesthetic regulations that Goddard's hoping to impose, and we're not arguing that. Absolutely, we all want Goddard to grow. We want Goddard to be prosperous. We want people to come. We have a business here. It's all around good for all of us. But we also want it to be fair and not arbitrary, not capricious. We're asking for an update to the code to eliminate the vague and overbroad statements which present due process issues that are unconstitutional and unlawful. We're asking city officials to be more aware of economic recession, as I've mentioned. We're asking that the City of Goddard maintain standards of openness and transparency in its operation. Don't hide the ball. If you're going to put it in the letter, I shouldn't have to hunt down for a hearing. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Is there any reason why you are not wanting to take care of your limb pile except for one limb at a time?
No, sir. There's no reason that I wouldn't take care of the limb pile. As soon as I have the time and I'm able, I'm happy to do so. We've actually moved some of the buildings that were falling apart that were previously there. We're slowly taking care of it. Some of the trees that have fallen, we're taking care of those. The property was in severe disrepair, and though it's not in a flood zone, if you go by and look at the cement building that still stands there roughly, you can see where the flood damage came up, I guess, probably about 3 feet. So if it gets wet at all, you're going to be in water.
You're done for
You can't mow. No one's going to mow it. No one will run their mower through it, much less so. It's hard to get back there. But the goal is to actually turn it into some property, rental properties. It's a whole other issue. But we have plans for the property, certainly.
Well, the reason it is because we got brush piles there. Brush piles are a natural attraction to varmints to hide in and to move into the neighborhoods and be fruitful and multiply and give everybody the varmints. And so that's the reason we have our code, and that's the reason we try to have it removed so that it doesn't create a problem. And anyone doing this, getting a notice, I mean, I'm sure the notice has our city phone number on it. If they have any questions at all, our city phone number is right there. All I have to do is call and say, hey, can you explain this to me if I don't understand it?
It's not a fact that I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hey, if I can add one
Yes.
thing. I think the flexibility in some of our city code allows us to have the ability to, like with the last agenda item, make an exception for someone in a different situation, right? And I think that's actually a good thing in some circumstances,
Sure.
because then the governing body as a whole, the people who you elected, can try to make the best decision for that citizen of that area. I guess my only concern and question for you is, when do you plan on getting it cleaned up? Because that's the goal isn't to pick on you or nitpick. I don't think that's the goal.
No, and I'm not here for
think
that. I
the
don't
goal
think
is
you're
to
doing
just-
that.
I think the goal is to just get it cleaned up and move on with our lives.
And that may very well be your goal, and that's very worthwhile and something I absolutely want to comply with. And I would ask you, are you asking for an end date?
Yeah, like when can we see it cleaned up and, in a
And what do you mean by
reasonable
cleaned
time?
up? Do you mean
Well, the
I
cinder
want the
blocks
cement
gone.
pads pulled off the ground?
The cinder blocks are a violation and the brush pile's a violation.
Okay. The cinder blocks line the back of the property, so they essentially act as a wall.
Well, they're a violation according to code, right?
So we would have
to tear down the entire wall.
Specifically, sorry, just to interject real fast. So specifically, the brush pile was a nuisance violation.
Yes, I thought that's what
I wasn't actually specifically saying the wall, the separator in the back.
Right.
So that cinder block, there's a pile, it's both accumulation of brush and then metal pieces, and then there's like a couple cinder blocks there. I'm not talking about the back wall.
Okay, I
Yeah,
wanted to make sure.
just to
In the
be
picture, it's
specific.
the back wall that I think is still, it's
Well, the back
kind
wall,
of
that's kinda
uneven.
where-
It's a little weird.
All right, so, oh, excuse me, where am I? Yeah, this part.
Yeah, you see that?
In terms of, so, just kind of interject again, Commissioner Larkin is actually correct. It's broad for that reason, and the letter that you sent us was submitted to the city attorney
Yes.
just for review, and he said that abatement is kind of, obviously it's supposed to be objective, that if we're sending you a picture of this, and we're saying it needs to be abated, we're not saying remove one limb, which I think that's kind of obvious. So at that particular point, what the city attorney is saying is that the reason the code is written the way it is to give the city staff sort of latitude
Sure.
before it's brought to city council. So it's made this way so that we can kind of help you along. And then by the time it comes to here, then you have that governing body can give you additional latitude to abate it. But abatement is objective according to.
Absolutely.
So,
So 30,
It would-
that,
I
I mean,
would-
is 30 days a reasonable amount of time to get it cleaned up?
No,
Can't
It's not?
no. Based on our status, my husband will be on AT. That's active training for the military. So unfortunately, he won't be able to make that 30-day. And I take the bar exam come July. So I also won't be available for that time frame. I would say a more appropriate, reasonable amount of time would probably be 6 months, if you can see your way to agreeing that. Now, that's not to abate, that is to remove. And while there is a objective standard to abatement, certainly it's, as you said, a lot of wiggle room, so it's vastly subjective as well.
Well, I don't know if 6 months is going to serve my,
Alternatively, I'm looking at fines. The city might do it for cheaper than I can find someone to do it. I'm happy to entertain that cost.
What is that cost?
well, we send it out to bid, we don't know. So I think that if we're wanting to be difficult, then we're just gonna have to go down that process of trying to get it bid out, and then we'll have to charge you whatever it costs us to fix it.
Would it be possible to see the bid so that I can happily, rather than finding a conflict here, I'm happy to see the bid and say, oh no, that's affordable based on what else I've seen.
I mean, I guess the other option, the counter to that is instead of having the city do it, you do it yourself, get it bid out and try to get the cheapest.
Which I have done, and unfortunately there's people out of business now in this climate that we're in. There's people who don't call back.
I think we're at,
I don't know what our
I'm gonna
options
make a
are.
motion.
Yeah.
I make a motion that we give you 30 days. If it's not done, then we are going to send it out for bid to have it removed.
Okay.
Okay, there's a motion, is there a second?
Second?
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 30 days.
Thank you.
Mr. Zimmerman, at this point, Mayor, excuse me, you can close this portion of the public hearing.
Okay, do I have to have that as a motion, or is that?
No, you can just close it.
I'll
Thank you very much.
Part of the public hearing.
Item H.2, so this is the R.D. Wood rezoning request case number zone-22-2. Quick background, Bo Hudson of Landmark Commercial Real Estate, LCR, has submitted an application on behalf of Mr. R.D. Wood to rezone 4 acres of city-owned land from C2 General Commercial District to R4 High Density Residential. City's been working with LCR since June of last year, reviewing all the possible options for developing the 4 acres of city-owned land located directly north of the Orchland Farm and Home Store. Original conversation started with the property remaining commercial for commercial development. After some review, it was determined that the location made it difficult for that property to be marketed to the general public due to it being screened from the US 54 by Orchlands. This led to a conversation of rezoning to a mixed-use or higher-density development. Ultimately, the decision was made to look at possible rezoning to a higher-density residential leaning towards row homes or quadplexes. The Planning Commission approved this rezoning request on June 13, 2022 unanimously at 6-0. Following requirements are found in Article 13, Amendment Section 100.H.1-17, and you've seen these before, and we'll go over them again, but feel free to interrupt me at any time and ask any questions about it. This obviously comes from Arthur Golden versus the City of Overland Park. What are the existing uses and their character and condition on subject property and the surrounding neighborhood? Land use to the east is a fire station. Land use classification fire and rescue. The land use to the south is commercial. Land use classification discount store. Southwest is commercial land. land use classification convenience store. To the west is a residential single-family detached dwelling, and to the north is platted for single-family detached, which is currently under construction. What is the current zoning of the subject property and that is surrounding neighborhood in relation to the request? The land use question is Zone C2 General Business District. The land to the south is Zone C2 General Business District. Southeast is Zone C2 General Business District. To the southwest is Zone C2 General Business District. To the west is Zone R1 Single Family Detached, and to the north is Zone R1 Single Family Detached. Is the length of time the subject property has remained undeveloped vacant as zone a factor in the consideration? It could be considered a factor. The original property owner gifted it to the city without any restriction on it. It is possible the zoning type is difficult to lease given its location behind the commercial property, so it is screened pretty heavily by Orscheln's, and so I think that might have been a consideration for that since it is zoned commercial currently. But that screening might prohibit any type of impulse buying since it's behind the Orscheln's. Would the request correct an error in the application of these regulations? No. Is the request caused by change or changing conditions in the area of the subject property? And if so, what is the nature and significance of such change or changing conditions? The city of Goddard is experiencing a large residential increase. Most of this increase is single-family detached owner-occupied dwellings. There is a need for rental units along with single-family detached housing. This comes from increased rental demand, which according to the Home Union, which is a real estate analytics site, is comprised of 5 factors: job growth, migration, household formation, elevated home prices, and lifestyle preferences. Do adequate sewer disposal and water supply and all other necessary public facilities, including street access, exist or can they be provided to serve the use that would be permitted on the subject property? Yes, road, sewer, water all exist, and service lines can be extended up North Main Street to reach the property. Would the subject property need to be platted or replatted in lieu of dedications made for right-of-way easements and access control building setback lines? No land is platted and access can be given off North Main Street. However, with the design layout, replatting would be necessary. He is proposing putting additional lots, which would mean that we'd have to go through a replatting. They also want to have reserves and easements in there as well. Platting helps with all of that. Would a screening plan be necessary for existing and or potential uses in the subject property? Yes, screening is necessary for multifamily, which is 3 units or more. These units will be 3 or more units, so screening would probably have to be on the north side, abutting that R1. Is suitable vacant land or building available and not available for development that currently has the same zoning as is requested? No, R4 is a new zoning classification. It was adopted last year. Actually, I think it was adopted in 2020. And no other piece of land in the city currently have this zoning classification. R3 is the next closest high-density residential. And the lots of R3 zoning classification are all developed, so there's no existing vacant R3 land. And R4 has been a floating classification. It's never been applied to any of our land. So this is the first time. If the request is for business or industrial uses, are such uses needed to provide more services or employment opportunities? This is residential, so 10 does not apply. Is the subject property suitable for the uses in the current zoning to which it has been restricted? No. C2 allows for apartments and condos and residential units above commercial mixed use, but no multifamily row homes and quadplexes. To what extent would the removal of restrictions, i.e. the approval of the zoning request, detrimentally affect other properties in the neighborhood? This type of request generates a lot of questions about value. Every time this happens, I reach out to the Suffolk County Residential Land Analyst, Jack Mannion, to kind of ask additional questions from him. The budding properties are commercial predominantly, and this in theory would devalue his own property. However, this does not seem to be the case since his proposals for 4 units or more, which is treated as a commercial land use, assessed at a residential rate of 11.5. So I don't think the commercial budding properties will actually devalue the properties that he's proposing to put on that land. Other examples have seen single-family detached housing and budding multifamily showing no decrease in value due to high demand in the area for both owner and renter type structures. This was a sort of verbatim quote that I got from Mr. Jack Mannion when he's looking at the Sedgwick County residential land areas. Would the request be considered with the purpose of zoning district classification, intent, and purpose of these regulations? So 13 is a kind of a loaded question, so we'll kind of dive into it a little bit. R4 residential high density district, this is the definition of R4. This district is designed for the placement of houses and mixed use developments to be designed in terms of maximizing the pedestrian experience or creating high level density. Design creativity is encouraged to generate more value and increase housing stock variability. This use falls under that zoning district design guide. And this is 13, Article 1.101. So this is right at the beginning of the subdivision regulations. This is the purpose of the subdivision regulations. And so under that, you will see different examples of what these subdivision regulations and zoning classifications are supposed to lead to. And that's what 13 is asking. Is the intent and purpose of the subdivision and zoning regulations being displayed with this request? And you're seeing that in some of these, it's definitely being displayed with that request, but particularly in K. K says, in our purpose for the subdivision and zoning regulations to implement the goals, policies, and proposals of the comprehensive plan for the zoning jurisdiction. Page 17 to 18 of the comprehensive plan, as mentioned in K, is to maximize the opportunity for each family or individual to rent or purchase safe, sanitary, and decent housing within their economic means. Support innovative planning and utilization of new technology and design of new neighborhood units. Plan for diversification in housing to meet the needs of individual and user groups and provide for multiple family dwellings. retirement housing, and other specialized housing as required to meet the needs of defined user groups within the community, encourage maintenance of older residential structures in good condition and replacement of obsolete structures with new units. So you can see that K represents what the comprehensive plan is reflecting in page 17 and 18, and so 13 is meeting the purpose of these regulations. 14 is requested in conformance with the comprehensive plan and does it further enhance the implementation of the plan. So yes, page 17 comprehensive plan as discussed, providing for multifamily units, retirement housing, and other specialized housing is required to meet the needs of defined user groups within the community. 14 is a reflection of 13 as well, which is part of that review. What is the nature of support or opposition to requests? So surprisingly, there has been no notice of opposition to this request. Support comes in the form of more residential housing variety. So we've only really had one individual reach out, and it wasn't in opposition to this, it was actually in favor of it. So that's just one thing. Is there any information, or are there any recommendations on the request available from professional persons or persons with related expertise which would be helpful in this evaluation? So just to kind of reach out, I reach out to colleagues across different states and locally. So in this particular case, I spoke with Everett Haynes. He's assistant city planner in Derby. He said they've allowed residential developments in all commercial districts. So this is very similar to what Goddard did. We allowed apartments and condos in our commercial district. So Derby took it a step further. They allowed all residential developments in their commercial district. So technically, and I was speaking with Everett, I said, well, Everett, in this particular case, would you be allowed to build a single-family detached house in a commercial parking lot? And he said, in theory, yes. So Derby would allow that. Now, this is obviously because of the increased housing demand that you're seeing across the nation. Obviously, no one's really going to build a housing, detached house in a parking lot, but in theory, this is what Derby is saying is allowed under their code. So our code is kind of similar in that regard. So we're seeing a lot of this, and we're seeing that the quadplexes have become very popular in Derby, specifically with a larger style apartments. They have gained momentum due to a higher use amongst seniors. So it's something that Derby's been seeing. By comparison, does the relative gain to the public health, safety, or general welfare outweigh the loss in property value or the hardship imposed upon the applicant by not approving the request? The development is for residential use and does not pose serious threat to health, safety, or welfare by its use. This is the property in question. This is a concept that was being proposed. As you can see, they're proposing putting a retention pond here. This is not final. Obviously, we're just talking about land use at this point. This would have to be platted, which the city council would see in the final platting stages. A small fee will be required for publication of the ordinance for the rezoning. Legally, it's approved as a form. It is recommended the city council waive the reading of the ordinance with a voice vote and then approve the rezoning request for case number zone-22-2 with a voice followed by a roll call. I believe Bo Hudson is here. Maybe he's not. I don't see him. So I'm not sure why he's not here, but he did represent the developer. Are there any questions at this time?
Can you go back to the picture?
Sure.
What is the road and entrance into Rustic Creek going to connect all of that?
Yeah, so Rustic Creek has Main Street extended north.
Street, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So they could just tie into Main Street as it heads north and up through Rustic
And that's
Creek.
going on to Rustic Creek's special.
Well, they would pay for their portion, and then the connector in would be on Rustic Creek.
Okay. I don't have a problem with the rezoning. I think more housing is what City of Goddard's been wanting. We're still looking for that rooftop density that we need for our commercial growth, so I have no problem with it. What about the fire, getting a fire truck in there? Is there any issue with?
I spoke with Captain Bill Harrell. The fire station is right over here. They have actually an easement on South Portion. That being said, I'm not sure if they would have an issue accessing that or not. I haven't really spoken with him about the access to that lot. He didn't raise any concerns, but then again, he hasn't seen the full layout yet, but that's because this is not a final layout. If there was to be some provisions in there,
Sure.
they would have to review that as well. But the fire department reviews
Right.
plats and everything else that goes with it, so.
Okay.
So do we want to have a motion to waive the reading of the ordinance?
I make a motion to waive the reading to the ordinance.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion and second, any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Bye.
Opposed? All right.
Then we need a motion for.
Motion to approve the ordinance.
Okay, I'll take a motion to approve the ordinance.
Motion.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion?
Roll call, Councilmember Larkin,
Yes.
Mayor Zimmerman,
Yes.
Councilmember Trailer,
Yes.
Councilmember Proctor.
Yes.
And it'll be ordinance 89.
Thank you very much. This is item H.3, so this is the Wells/Underwood Development Rezoning Request, case number zone-22-3. So quick background, Fisher Wells has submitted a rezoning request on behalf of both himself and Justin Underwood for proposed development on Maple between 167th Street and 183rd. The rezoning request would change the zoning classification of proposed land development from R1 single-family residential development to R2 two-family development. Purpose of the rezoning, land would be allowed duplex to be built for duplex community development. This would allow the developer to proceed without having to go through a conditional use permit, CUP, for each lot. Planning Commission failed to establish an official vote since it was a 3 for and 3 against. So this is going to require a supermajority of the City Council, which means that 3 out of 4 have to vote in favor of it. Fisher Wells has submitted, that's a repeat, what happened there. So quick analysis, the following requirements are found in Article 13 Amendments, Section 100.H.1-17. What are the existing uses and their character? So this is kind of a repeat of what you just saw, but we have to do it for every additional rezoning, so bear with me. What is the existing uses and their character and condition on subject property in the surrounding neighborhood? The land use to the east and northeast is farming ranch land with no improvements. To the southeast is the land use designation of manufactured home park, Maple Village. To the south is the land use single family detached Spring Hill and farming ranch land, no improvements. To the west, the land use is farming ranch operation with improvements. To the north is single family detached, which is X7th edition. What is the current zoning of the subject property and that of the surrounding neighborhood in relation to the request? The subject property is currently zoned R1 single family residential. Land to the east and northeast is zone RR, that's a rural residential, which is a county classification. The land to the southeast is zone MH, manufactured housing. To the south, the land is zone R1, single family residential. To the west, the land is zone RR, rural residential. To the north, the land is zone RR, rural residential. Is the length of time the subject property has remained undeveloped vacant as zone is factored into consideration? No, the length of time the land has remained undeveloped was not due to zoning, but more due to development growth of the Goddard area. Would the request correct an error in the application of these regulations? Nope. Is the request caused by changes or changing conditions of subject in the area and the subject property? And if so, what are the nature and extent of such changes or changing conditions? So this is kind of something we've already talked about. Goddard is experiencing growth. A lot of it is single-family detached, and part of that is the prices with across the nation is making there be a demand for more rental properties. Do adequate sewer disposal and water supply and all the necessary public facilities, including street access, exist, or can they be provided? So yes, petitions for specials will be submitted per the standard development process for the introduction of sewers, water, street, and stormwater, similar to other developments in the city. So anytime there's a large swath of land that wants to be developed, developers submit petitions, it's considered, and we move forward for improvements for those improvements. Would the subject property need to be platted or replatted or in lieu dedications made for right-of-way, easements, and access control of building setback lines? So yes, the land is unplatted. You don't have to go through platting process for necessary dedications, reserves, easements, and engineering review. Would a screening plan be necessary for existing and or potential uses in the subject property? No, so screening is necessary only for multifamily, 3 units or more, and commercial. These units will be 2-family or single-family, so there's no screening necessary. Is suitable vacant land or building available or not available for development that currently has the same zoning as is requested? So I say no. Current zoning for R2 is around 135 acres out of approximately 1,576, which accounts for about 9% available land for duplexes without having to go through a conditional use permit. So R1 is around 90%, R2 is around 9%, R3 is around 1%. Planning Commission asked me to do a quick analysis of land use and functionality, and so this is what you're seeing here. We have about 42 current parcels. This is per the Sedgwick County GIS. We get a digital download from them every 3 months, so this has the functions that the county has identified. So we have about 42 parcels that have identification of a duplex, which accounts for 2.29%. Farm and ranch operation with improvements accounts for about 125 parcels, or 6.8%. Federally subsidized apartment complexes are 0.22%. Garden apartment complex, 1 to 3 stories, is 2, which is 0.11%. Manufactured home park, 3, 0.16%. Single family detached residential, 1,654 parcels, which is 90.33%. Triplex 1 is 0.05%, and the grand total is 1,831. So if the request is for business or industrial uses, which it's not, or such uses need to provide more services or employment opportunities, so 10 is not applicable in this case. Subject property suitable for the use in the current zoning to which has been restricted. The current zoning R1, single-family residential. It could remain R1, but it would require every lot that is proposed for a duplex go through a conditional use permit for that lot to be able to build a duplex. To what extent would a removal of restrictions, i.e. the approval of the zoning district, detrimentally affect the property in the neighborhood? So value is difficult to determine. Conversations, once again, with Jack Mannion, Cedar County Residential Land Analyst, revealed that urban and rural properties appraised differently based on the infrastructure that supports those properties. So rural properties tend to decline a little bit faster simply due to the fact that rural properties are responsible for their own infrastructure that supports those homes. So lagoons and water wells versus urban properties that have the city support their infrastructure. According to the county, they appraise rural properties differently because of this. Their assumption is that the city is going to maintain the infrastructure that supports urban real estate, and so those properties have a steady increase in value if there's a demand for them without a decrease in that percentage of the value, versus rural properties, which will also increase in value if there's a demand, but at some point that percentage of increase might decline because the assumption is after 30 years those rural properties need to start replacing their lagoons and water wells, and that's the responsibility of the property owner. So the assumption is the city is saying that, or the county is saying the city is going to maintain the infrastructure that supports the urban fabric, so it's going to have a steady increase in value for those properties. By this very metric, urban homes with similar square footage of rural home are valued higher than the rural counterparts due to the improvement of the urban infrastructure versus the rural infrastructure. This, coupled with the fact that every property has a neighborhood code, aligns with the development it resides within. So appraisals review similar properties within that neighborhood for determining comparable property values. So if you have a house in Spring Hill and it's 1,200 square feet, they're not going to look to St. Andrews to find a comparable property. They're going to look within Spring Hill. Spring Hill's got its own unique neighborhood code. St. Andrews has its own unique neighborhood code. Elkridge has its own unique neighborhood code. Talia and every other neighborhood. So every time a subdivision goes in and development goes in, it's assigned a neighborhood code. So when you have comparable properties for your appraised value, they're going to pull it within that neighborhood code. So that's why you're going to see every time you look at your appraisal, if you want to dispute it in March when your appraisal comes up, it's those comparable properties. You're going to see a neighborhood code on there, and that's what they're referencing. So they're not going to pull a comparable property out from the county, and vice versa. They're not going to look to the county and try to pull an urban property and compare it. Would the request be consistent with the purpose, zoning district classification, intent and purpose of these regulations? So 13, once again, yes, the use would remain residential and city's desires to allow more residential developments to be built within the city limits. It is classified as infill development. So would the request be consistent with the purpose? Like I said on 13, Article 1.101, purpose as defined is the following, which we talked about a little bit, specifically K, specifically page 17 to 18 of the comprehensive plan. Very similar to what we just saw. Once again, page 17 to 18. For question 14, what is the nature of support opposition? So this is what you're typically going to see. Support comes in as a request for more rental properties in order to host those who are either unwilling or unable to purchase a home in the moment. Opposition comes in desire for certain neighborhoods to remain relatively unchanged in their land use composition, single-family detached housing only, or for no developments of any kind, to help to continue to cultivate small town rural experience. That's typically what you see the dividing line is in terms of support versus opposition. Is there any information or are there any recommendations on the request available from professional persons or persons with related expertise which would be helpful in this evaluation? So since everyone gets tired of hearing me talk about these type of things, I always try to reach out to my colleagues, like I said. So I reached out to my colleague over in Lake County, Florida, just to kind of ask what they're seeing. They have a really interesting dynamic over there where they have a lot of single family, a small amount of multifamily, and then a big jump to large units for senior housing. So I don't know if that's surprising you guys, but Florida is obviously a snowboard destination, so it's going to be all traditionally single family and then a big jump in density to large apartment complexes with senior housing. So they have an issue for them is what's called missing middle, where the variety of housing is non-existent. How Florida has been trying to tackle this a little bit is that they actually have strong property rights in Florida, so a developer can build within that zoning as long as they meet density restrictions. So they don't actually have necessarily land use restrictions over there in Lake County. They have density restrictions. So if you have 2 units per acre, you could put a duplex because that's 2 units on that 1 acre, or you could put 2 single-family detached housing units because that's 1 unit and 1 unit. So they would allow the developer to do whatever they wanted in that particular case as long as they met those density restrictions. So that's just kind of interesting. By comparison, does the relative gain to public health, safety, general welfare outweigh the loss in property value or the hardship imposed upon the applicant by not approving the request? So development, once again, is for residential use, does not pose a serious threat to health, safety, or welfare by its use. There was some concerns about posting signs and receiving letters. We've had this come, we've been emailed this and called about this multiple times, so I thought I would bring some clarity. State law does not require the posting of signs on lots for notifications of zoning changes. So some individuals say, hey, there's no sign on this lot saying it's up for a zoning change, why not? And the reason is because it's not a requirement by state law. Cities can adopt additional codes to post those signs if they want to. Article 10.103 of the city code says the board may give additional notice to other persons and may from time to time provide by its rules. Such rules may include requirements for additional notice to be provided for the posting of signs on the property to be considered an appeal application. So you can adopt more regulations, but the state law does not require it. Also, state law dictates that notices go out to everyone within 200 feet within the city limits and the adjacent property, or 1,000 feet if outside the city limits. 459 North 179 Circle West is around 1,900 feet from the boundary of the property in question. 459 said that they never got a letter, and so this is generally why. If you're not within 200 feet of the property, you're not going to receive a letter. If you're 1,000 feet out in the county, you would still receive a letter, but if you're beyond that, you're not going to receive a letter. This is the school district boundary. This question came up and concerns, and is consistently being brought during council and planning commission, but this is the USD 265 boundary. This is Goddard, Wichita, and the county. These are all the parcels with single-family detached duplex or triplex within that boundary. Goddard has about 1,697 parcels. We are contributing about $2.1 million to the school district. We collect about $1.2 million in property taxes. This is the county. The county has about 855. They're contributing about $1.7 million to the school. They're collecting about $922,000 in property taxes. And this is Wichita within that school district. They have about 7,636 lots. They're contributing about $12.1 million to the school district. They're collecting $6.9 million in property taxes. So the question about who's impacting the school district, pretty heavily in favor of Wichita in this particular case. So this is kind of a question that comes up a lot. How much is this development going to impact the school district, and which jurisdictions have more sway in terms of impacting the school district? This is the original request proposed by the developer. They have currently amended it, so the new request is just to rezone the western portion, 72.62 acres, with a proposed single-family detached buffer over here, which simply means that they would put single-family detached on this side. The rest of it would be duplexes or anything of that proposed nature. These are some of the examples and concepts that they submitted. Duplexes being on the left, single-family homes on the right. Financially, ordinance for the rezoning will need to be published according to small cost. Legally, it's approved as a form. It is recommended that City Council both waive the reading of the ordinance with a voice and approve the rezoning request, case number zone-22-3, with a voice and a roll call. Quick reminder, it would have to be a supermajority for the approval to overrule the planning commission. But at this point, I will invite Fisher Wells, if he's here, to speak.
So thank you all for having me. I'm one of the developers, Justin Underwood, my partner couldn't make it. To go over a little bit, kind of, if you don't mind going back to that photo overview of the two parcels. So we had submitted the request for both the east and the west parcel. Last week, we had heard from the opposition that both the size and the fact that we would be butting duplexes up to single-family homes was the concern. So what we did to address that is we switched from 150 or so acres to this 72 on the west, and put a buffer on the north corner to help make it more palatable to the folks to the north who had concerns of duplexes butting up against their land and their property. I just want to emphasize that the duplexes that we build, if you want to pop over to the, so we built a good portion of these. The concept up top left is something we have not built but want to build. The product we do build is to hold, right? We're not going and selling these after we build them. So we build these to last. Justin had mentioned last week that one on the bottom left corner, we actually just ended up refinancing, and the energy score and an energy consultant goes out and assesses the property. It met 100. It was the first single family build to rent community that met 100. through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac standards. So just shows the quality of the duplex we build. Additionally, the properties we do have are managed internally through RPM, which is a management company that we own. We're active in Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, and obviously Kansas, here in Wichita. The properties that we built and manage all have waiting lists. So right when one person moves out, the next moves in. In addition, the management company maintains the exterior, yards, fences. All these will have fenced-in backyards that are bifurcated between the two sides. And we do take care of the interior. So appliances, somebody's hot water heater goes out, we go in there and either replace it or fix it. So all of these are manicured and well maintained. So we don't have, the rental property that's owned by a mom and pop that may not have the capabilities of keeping up to standard. So, some of these mom and pops that own in large subdivisions that were originally built to sell, buy them and, live 3 states away and don't necessarily have the management team in place to make sure that they're staying up to code. So I think that's pretty much all I had. I just kind of wanted to reiterate what we had discussed last week and also address what opposition we were faced with and how we amended to appease the opposition.
I have a question.
I'm sorry, there's no questions right
Oh,
now.
there isn't?
No.
Well, I wasn't here last week. I didn't have a chance to talk about it.
Sorry, citizens' comments are over at this point.
Yeah, that's not right.
I'm sorry.
It's not right you guys didn't put up a zoning sign either for people to know about it. I live close to that, and I can see right across to it. I'm wondering.
Sorry, but citizens' comments are done. If you want to
Yeah.
talk about it later, we'd be happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess we can talk to the attorney about it.
Y'all have any questions for me?
Well, in the past, there's been questions about, quality of people that are gonna be renting, and so your rental fees are gonna probably start out at what? Per unit?
Right around 1,400. And each side is going to be anywhere from 1,600 to 1,800 square feet.
So anyone renting that property isn't gonna be a Section 8 person.
Correct. Yep. It's all market rate, and we go through, our management company does background checks on each individual, and we require 3 times income, 3 times rent, is the income level that they have to achieve in order to be accepted if they apply.
Does anybody have any question?
Yeah, I was kind of curious if you're going to develop the other 72 as well.
Well, that was the original thought, but our goal now is to get approval on R2 on that west parcel, and then there's potential down the road that we could take down the other 77 and do a similar concept, but it seemed to be more palatable given last week's commentary.
Well, my point of view, it was zoned for single family, and you're gonna put that buffer there to make sure that whoever's north of you
Exactly.
sees the single family dwelling there. And where does that road empty out on, do you know? Is there, leaving that, is there gonna, do you have
So we
that?
haven't gone through full engineering yet, but the intent would be to have the entrance and exit be right there in West Maple.
Right there off of Maple. Micah, could you also point out with the pointer where Wichita's located and where we've been in contact with the developer who's looking at either Wichita or Goddard, and Wichita already provides services?
Absolutely. So Wichita, in December of 2021, as you're probably aware, Tally is right over here, and it's almost a similar layout as this land right here, but Tally is right over here. I don't know who bought the land, I can't say specifically, but somebody bought the land right abutting 167 right here, and Wichita annexed it. So Wichita is now sharing 167 right here. Our city limits go up and around here and then come down over on this side. This is Maple Village. Mr. Jeff Lang of Lang Real Estate is talking about developing this land right over here. And we're hoping to continue that development further north as things progress. But Wichita is right over here on our side.
And it's important to highlight too the strategic relationship of this growth corridor, because if Wichita touches one platted property, or they go to develop a parcel that is adjacent to, within 6 months, those platted properties that are touching that adjacent parcel will be in Wichita. And there's, that's just unilateral annexation.
What about utilities? Is there any need?
We have existing sewer and a small water main there.
Are they big enough?
I would defer to Phil at this time, but I believe so.
Okay.
Good evening, Phil Meyer with Baughman Company, agent for the applicant. And there is a lift station that sits pretty close across the street along Maple that can serve all of this ground. And then there's,
Green is the high somewhere.
yeah, if I have to find my lift station. There's a lift station.
It's right, just under the W and the M on Maple, right there.
Okay. Yeah, lift station right there that can serve this. It gets a little touchy in the corner up here, but it can serve this ground, especially if it's slab. We're gonna struggle. We can do basements everywhere except up here in this corner, and there's water in Maple that can serve this.
Okay.
So there is adequate utilities.
Okay.
Where's that 96 supposed to be?
So it's a great question. The maps that we have and the maps that KDOT will show you shows it going through here.
Yeah.
If you look at your GIS and look at what they've purchased along Kellogg down here, that does align with that.
Yeah.
That's subject to, that's always subject to change, but that is the alignment that I'm in possession of today.
And we did have a conversation with KDOT to see if that entire site was to be developed, if they could go ahead and buy that protective overlay. And they don't have the funding to do so at this time.
So that other 77 acres there,
Mm-hmm.
there's still potential for developing that also?
Mr. Fisher Wells,
What's that?
they're asking you a question.
Sorry, can you
On that
repeat
other
that?
77 acres, there's still potential for developing that in the future then, if
Yes.
this works out?
Yep. That would be the intention.
And only one question I had of you, if you decide to develop that. I talked to Micah about this. There'd be a potential that we could get an easement going north-south on there for the city only, for a water line going north, as far as, we're gonna need future water,
Sure.
and the aquifer is around 21st Street.
Yeah, I think we'd. No, you're good. Go ahead.
But I would like to see that, if that's possible, if you could make that in your plans, if you're gonna develop that, to allow us to do that, so we could have future water for that north area if we decide to get a new well field up north.
Yeah, I think there could be an easement. Obviously there's common areas that we're going to have in either one of these developments, and I think there's definitely a workaround there if we did decide to pursue the 77.
Because we did a study about 20 years ago, and that's the aquifer is around 21st where it's strong aquifer up in there. And we've talked to some people up there about that.
And that can be addressed in the planning phase.
But that's the only thing I was concerned about is,
Sure.
if we let that go to Wichita, we won't have that option.
Yeah.
So I guess what do we need, a motion?
Motion to waive the reading.
Make a motion to waive the reading.
Second.
Second. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, now I guess we have a motion for rezoning then. Micah, what?
Yeah, at this point, you do be a motion and a second to approve the rezoning request, case number zone-22-3, just like you saw with the previous agenda item, and then followed by a roll call.
I'll make a motion to approve the rezoning request, case zone dash 2-3.
I second it.
Motion and second, any other discussion? The roll call.
And this is for the approval of the second ordinance, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Councilmember Larkin,
Yes.
Mayor Zimmerman,
Yes.
Councilmember Trailer,
Yes.
Councilmember Proctor.
Yes.
And that will be ordinance 890.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, welcome to stay for the rest of the evening, or if not, have a good night.
Thank you.
This is item H.4.
I got my money out of it.
Okay, H4 for consideration of a police vehicle repair. Police vehicle 33 is a 2015 Dodge Charger, all-wheel drive with 107,000 miles on it. It was purchased used in 2017 with 50,000 miles from the Kansas Highway Patrol Fleet Program. As part of the current fleet replacement plan, Vehicle 33 was scheduled to be sold in 2023. On May 21st, 2022, the engine failed and needed towed to Davis Moore for repair. Final diagnosis from Davis Moore said the motor of the engine had metal shavings inside the engine caused by worn lifters. It is currently not operable, and an estimate of $8,860 was provided as to the total cost amount for the replacement engine. By repairing the engine on Vehicle 33, we'll be able to retain our current fleet amount without major disruption. Currently, each officer has a vehicle assigned to them per our take-home vehicle policy. A new officer is due to complete field training in August and will be assigned to Vehicle 28, which is now currently being driven by the officer who was driving Vehicle 33. There is also one officer position open to fill and an officer on military leave who could return to work Q1 of 2023 or anytime in 2024. Vehicle 33 replacement would be extended to at least 2024 or 2025 with this new engine. Based on our current fleet staffing and the fleet needs, our goal is to continue with scheduled replacement of 2 vehicles for 2023 and each year moving forward, hopefully increasing that replacement number to 3 vehicles each year starting in 2024 to accommodate a full staff, potential growth, and replace vehicles before they encounter costly repair needs. Replacing the motor would also increase the resale when it is replaced. Attached there is a spreadsheet with all fleet vehicles, the vehicle numbers, their year, type of vehicle, the current mileage, annual mileage per year each vehicle accrues, an estimate for when we would retire them, the use and who's assigned to them. Obviously the detective and say myself, we don't drive as much, so those vehicles have less miles on them. What I was kind of just browsing through these notes real quick before I gave this presentation, what I didn't really articulate in here is earlier you had approved 2 vehicles for purchase. That was vehicle 43 and 44. Those vehicles have yet to arrive. We all know the production delay in vehicles, and I actually had to pencil in and get a PO number for those vehicles just to purchase them and say we would purchase them back in October. So that's how long it would take. And we're still about 2 months out for those vehicles that we purchased essentially last year to get delivered and even be close to being operable. So it's not
like we could just say, let's just sell that vehicle right now and just go out and get a new one. It's at least 2 months out before we even get these 2 new vehicles that we're expecting to get. And these 2 vehicles right here are the hybrid vehicles. So. The repair would be allocated to capital outlay 10, 210, 82, 10, and legal is approved to as
One
formed.
moment. I wanted that to go to Fund 81.
Okay, so 10,
It'll be Equipment Reserve Fund, Police, Fleet.
okay, okay. So we'll go to the Equipment Reserve Fund, Police Fleet.
Driving, he's on leave.
It's my recommendation, I thought a lot about it, do we keep the vehicle at this point, do we sell it? We would be hot seating a patrol car, and it would not just be as easy as one guy getting off shift and one guy coming on to shift, because we have an overlap with our 10-hour schedule. So, if you guys have any questions about this proposal.
And thank you for giving a lot of thought to that. I know.
Who's doing the engine work for you?
Davis Moore, the dealership.
There you go.
I'm fine with
You
it.
gonna fix that motor?
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to make sure it was gonna be something that had a decent warranty
And,
on
and
it.
it does have a 100,000 mile,
Even
or
though it's a
3-year.
police car.
yes, the engine does come with a 100,000 mile warranty
What would be the total replacement cost?
on it. What they told me was it would very unlikely exceed 8,800.
No, for the entire vehicle.
Oh,
And
entire vehicle?
it's an
The
actual
entire-
motor from the factory, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, they're better than that.
And for a vehicle to purchase right now, to get complete upfit in, minus taking equipment out and putting it in, would probably be about $54,000.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that leaves some
Total was right
That's
around
a no-brainer.
111, right?
Well,
And I
if we
think-
purchase
I think-
these 2
think if you're
vehicles,
gonna- If you think if you're gonna
that was a
authorize
total,
that, you may as well
essentially with
authorize.
adding some equipment was
May as well
136.
authorize like transmission service and get it ready to go for another 50,000.
You think we could can it? And we are also not racing our police vehicles out on a strip either.
Why not?
I don't know what the maintenance schedule's been like, but if they're gonna put the motor in, my recommendation would be they go ahead and do a transmission service on it while they're there, and a differential service while they're there, so you've got another 50,000 miles
Okay.
without any problems.
So we need to approve it. Can you approve that?
Yes.
You want to
Just
give him an additional amount for that service you spoke about?
I don't think that should exceed another 1,000, I wouldn't think.
So it's within our floor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Making a motion,
Yeah, if you'd like to make a motion to
approve.
recommend the city council authorize the repair for vehicle 33 for the amount of $88,860.
But to be
And including
including an
additional
extra
cost of-
additional 1,000 for the transmission
And the differential service.
and the differential service maintenance. So bumping it to 9,860.
Second.
And a second. Motion is second, any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
We're going to do water and sewer budget tonight. Stop me whenever you want if you have any questions about anything. These are fairly straightforward. After redoing our debt obligations last year, restructuring those, and retiring the old revolving loan funds, everything's been pretty much, baseline to last year, or to this year's current budget. Anticipated projects and purchases in for the water
utility, like replace up to 5 fire hydrants, cost about $20,000. Exercise about 350 valves, blow-off valve maintenance, which includes locates and GPS for all those valves. Water distribution maintenance, blow off the entire water system, and continue the digital mapping of our utility infrastructure. This is our first column here is actual numbers for 2021. 22 adopted is what we adopted last year. This column is our estimate based on what we adopted last year, and we're proposing this for 23. This does not include any sort of change to our current rate structure. You'll notice that we have got significantly more in tap fees anticipated this year and going forward than what we budgeted last year. That's just the nature of our current residential growth. As far as on the expenditure side, for administration, this is both the administration of essentially a quarter of this our personnel costs, a quarter of administration, the actual admin in this building, and a third of our public works staff are included with that. Nothing really changing. We're just anticipating or budgeting 5% to employee salaries and hourly staff. And we always budget an additional family health insurance for each department in the city. So if somebody gets married, somebody has a kid, whatever, we have budget authority to increase them up to the next highest health insurance plan. Yes, thank you. So transmission, this is everything from the especially from the wells to the system. We don't have anything budgetarily changing much here. The additional, most of the additional contractuals are going to be for our utility costs, mostly electricity. Those are quite a bit higher than what we had anticipated during budget last year. And then also we're going to see increase for fuel costs in some of these departments as well. Treatment, this is our chlorination system essentially, and those are commodities. That increase is all for chemical costs, which have gone up. Debt service, this cost center, we did spend. That was basically our first payment of the year last year for our interest payment on the water line, but because we have moved away from a revolving loan through KDHE, we moved to a general obligation debt. We're actually transferring what would have been our debt payment out of water fund into the bond and interest fund where we make those debt payments. So that's this top line here is transferred to bond and interest fund, and we'll be making that first full transfer this year, as this is the first year we have the full amount of that principal and interest payment on our refinanced water debt. We also are transferring, I'm going to do $25,000 to the equipment reserve fund. I originally wanted to budget $50,000 to the equipment reserve fund because we like to transfer in $200,000 a year to that fund, with a quarter of it coming from each of our major funds, water, sewer, street, and general fund. But to save fund balance in the water fund, I want to only do about half that, and we'll do the additional out of the sewer fund. I'll show you that later, because that fund's got a much healthier fund balance, so I'd still like to draw it down some. We also transferred $25,000 to the water reserve fund out of here, which we have depleted quite a bit in the last year with our well upgrades. So it's total fund, expenditures and anticipated ending fund balance for the water fund. Under the sewer fund, anticipated projects and purchases. I'll let Brooke chime in on this too if he wants to. These are all specifically improvements for the wastewater treatment facility, and I don't really know what all this stuff is, but essentially this is the thing that they're up for maintenance in next year. So if anybody has any questions, we'll go through those. And you'll see here on the revenue side for sewer, we're also, much higher tap fees, just like we did in the water side, and because of our new residential construction specifically. And again, these collections and revenue does not anticipate a rate increase. The growth there is due to the growth of our system and the growth of usage. Again, administration, this is personnel costs, other administrative costs. Transmission is essentially the everything in the ground, the lift stations, etc. Treatment is our facility. These are our regular facility costs, which includes all of these costs that we talked about earlier included in that. And again, we refinanced our debt service, so that's not being paid out of our debt service costs anymore. It's being paid out of our transfer, which is this top line here, where we're transferring that to the bonded interest fund to make those debt payments. And we're transferring into equipment reserve fund, like I spoke about, transferring into the sewer reserve fund and to the capital improvement fund. And the capital improvement transfer is also intended to draw down some of our excess fund balance and sewer operating costs, and hopefully offset some of the other capital improvement commitments we have as well. We have our ending expenditures and fund balances. Is there any question about water and sewer budget? We will be moving on to, I'm not sure it'll be the next meeting after. We can have a meeting after July 4th, but next time we'll do our other operating funds, and probably we'll do the general fund and our other tax funded funds as well. So,
Thank you, Matt.
thank you. City Administrator report.
Honorable Mayor and Council. You can see the progress on the Starbond site. It's cleaner. You can see the ball fields in the background, and here's a little better shot with the 3 completed. You can see they're working on the central common area, and then beginning with the subsurface on the 2 to the south and southeast. Arbor Creek, this is looking back toward phase 1 with, you can see just the tail end of phase 2. And then the clubhouse construction site here, with the next slide being a little more detail on the community center for the development there, with the pool and some of the pickleball courts. Elk Ridge, looking back east down Maple. More clover leaf with phase 2, and then of course phase 3 just beginning to get underway. You can see the foundations going in for Rustic Creek, and this is right off of 199th when you turn right, so coming out of the roundabout. This is the duplexes between Main Street on the top of the image and Cedar on the south. and you can see they're starting to, with the weather being hot and dry, they're starting to begin the work for the foundations. Scooter's progress to the lot to the north, and you can see Kellogg on the right-hand side with Cedar and Pizza Hut. Just a reminder that we've got the 4th of July coming up, and it'll be July 2nd at 7 p.m., hosted by the Goddard Lions Club. And then some upcoming discussions that we'll have. Obviously, the budget will be ongoing. We'll begin discussion on sign regulations and the equity benefit issuance fees, big arm final plat, and we'll talk about the chamber after action review and splash pad surface bids. And that concludes my report. If there are no questions for myself or city team. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to governing by the comments. Hunter?
Just want to say thank you, Micah. I know your job isn't always the most glamorous. It's a little controversial, but I know that we all feel that you do a good job, and thank you for
I
everything.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt, for your report. And how's everything in the library going?
Busy.
Good? Busy? Busy. Okay, well, that's all I have. Thank you.
Michael?
Yeah, thanks for standing up during some awkward commentary.
No, no problem. No, I'm happy to help.
Doing your job, yeah. Yeah, also excited for, hopefully a new neighborhood coming in. Looks like a real well-run operation.
I seen it coming though. Well, yeah, I'm not going. Yeah. Anyway,
Right.
I seen that one coming, but yeah, you did a good job.
Oh, thank you.
Definitely.
Appreciate it.
Silcott, you did a good job too.
Just saying. Thank you.
I still want an electric. You need a Ford Mustang electric.
I'll look into it.
Can we get a tax incentive for that?
Better get a big tax incentive.
I mean,
We don't pay
aren't they?
taxes.
I mean, are they giving us some break or something? Cities go electric.
All I heard is Wake Forest just recall all of them.
Yeah.
I thought they had
Yeah,
battery
there's
issues
massive
or something.
recall.
Really, massive recall. Wow. They did like 0 to 60 in 3 seconds.
Those electric motors got a lot of torque.
Anyway, that's about it. How about you?
Yeah. Thank you, Michael, for your work on the different things.
Of course, I'm happy to help.
And if you feel like sometimes you need a bulletproof vest for council, well, we'll try to find you one.
Just the Bible, thank you.
The Bible.
Brooke, how's the wells coming?
They are functioning properly. We do not have a start date on 7 yet. Lane Christensen crews got together Friday and they were getting their schedule together. I didn't hear from them today, but I will follow up tomorrow for sure. But 4 is functioning properly, as are 8 and 5. So we got 3 out of 4 running properly.
The only thing I had also, I forgot to mention to you, that we had what is this street up here? Is that First Street up here?
First Street right here.
That big white house, 2-story house, it's got about 1.5 foot tall grass in the yard too. Micah, you might take a look at that.
I'll be happy to.
We haven't had enough code violations, so we can give you a little more business.
What was that address?
Thatcher's yard's pretty long
Oh,
too.
it's about 1 block west of Main here. On First Street.
Maybe with the city to bid it out for me.
Right, it's the first.
But I don't have anything else, so I appreciate all the work you've done, and hope everybody has a good 4th of July and enjoys it. With that, I take a motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
Motion second. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Awesome. Right? Hey, is that camera off?
You think you're actually coming back?